Okay, well, then let's talk a little bit more about this Christian conviction and confession that God is love, the love revealed to us decisively in the person of Jesus, certainly in his ministry, uh, a ministry of already of self-giving, of laying down his life that culminates in his crucifixion on a Roman cross. We would know virtually nothing or very little of him if that's where the story ended. But to the his disciples' shock, he made there were appearances of this crucified Jesus, now alive again, to his disciples on various occasions. Will probably the best. I mean, both the Gospels talk about these appearances, as does Paul in 1 Corinthians 15. And on that basis, we believe that Jesus truly is God's Son, God's Messiah, God's ultimate revelation, capital U, capital R, to humanity, and and on that basis, we believe that God is love. If that's the love that has created the universe, including our world, and we want to have a big picture of creation. Okay, that's one thing I want to say. When we say creation, it's natural for us to start with ourselves and our planet. I get that. But let us always recall that our planet is within a solar system that's just a a dot on a galaxy, and that galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, is unimaginably huge. Okay, uh, 100,000 years light, 100,000 light years across, but that galaxy is but one of literally millions of galaxies that we now astronomers and cosmologists can locate and more or less count. Um, vast universe. And what we believe about God, when we say God, and as Christians we mean this one supremely revealed in Jesus, is the power that's created this, and that power most essentially is love. But now let's zero it back to our world, where, as we all know, every day, in every moment, horrific, painful, dehumanizing, abusive, murderous events occur every moment, just on our planet. I don't even know what's going on out beyond, but just on our planet. And this should raise questions. And generally we call it, the problem of evil. If God is love, and God is the creator of all things, and therefore exercises that kind of power, why is it that so often in our lives we feel not only pain and suffering and sorrow and loss, but at least sometimes feel as though there is no solace? That is there really a God who is love, who is comforting us? Is that just a wish fulfillment kind of fantasy? Because there is a lot of suffering and evil in the world, and there's no doubt that what we call the problem of evil is usually number one on the list of people who object to faith in God. I will not solve that problem in the next few minutes, but we could at least take a few steps in a direction that might help a little bit. I'm sorry, I've got a little thing on my ear that's really bothering me. It's a little scab. I shouldn't be doing that right now, should I? Oh my goodness. So one of the ways, at least the beginning of a way that Christian theologians have defended belief in God as love and as ultimate creator, is in the free will defense. I can't remember if I actually used that phrase in the reading, but the free will defense, that is the defense of God, is essentially that God has created, we'll just start with our planet. We don't know what else is going on, really, but that God has created in this world creatures who exercise a significant degree of power, agency, and responsibility. We may not like it, we may wish we didn't have it, but doggone, it seems we do. So if somebody says, why does God allow, warfare, all these wars, and what's happening right now in Gaza, and mothers and babies dying, and innocent people, not just losing their homes, but their lives, and, the things go on. And it's not a very, it may not be a very comforting answer, but a big part of the answer is this is human beings exercising their power of agency or choice, freedom, whatever term you want to choose, in terribly bad ways. And we could say in ways that in the Bible, God clearly commands against our doing, right? Thou shalt not kill, just for starters. Thou shalt not steal. We could see all these commandments of God that actually point us away from much of the evil that we do by our misuse of freedom. Now, we could ask, well, why? Why has God created us that way? Why is it we're so prone to fail and to just being screwed up in so many ways? And some people will appeal to, well, it's like Adam's fault, and that is sort of the leading Christian tradition answer that a great deal of the world's ills have befallen us because of our first parents' transgression in the Garden of Eden. As I mentioned in my book, though, that seems very convenient, doesn't it? Like it's their fault. I think that one of the things we can learn from that story is that human beings do share. They do share. We share in the guilt and also the repercussions of sin. We don't commit them all on our own. There's plenty that's gone on before us. We're born into a world that already has a great deal of animosity, hatred, apathy, fear, suspicion, violence, so on, already cooked into it. And the real question is, well, who cooked it in? And we want to avoid saying that God did it because we think that God is love. We hate to say that we did it, but clearly we've done a great deal of it. But, some people have then also appealed to another cosmic power, we'll say Satan, that it's Satan's fault. Now, you have the reading on this where I talk about a lot of these different elements. But let me just say a little bit in the next few minutes, and that'll be it for these lectures, or this lecture material. Christian tradition has very often insisted, quite strongly, that because God is love and that God is perfect, although we probably should use our reason and inquire, what is the tradition meant when it said that God is perfect? What do we mean by that? What does Scripture teach us about divine perfection? So you see already I'm trying to appeal to these different reason, tradition, Scripture. But if we go with this traditional notion, God is perfect and therefore surely created, we'll say, basically a perfect world. A world without suffering and sorrow and violence and death and so on. So it was perfect in the beginning, and then we've said, but because God gave human beings freedom, even though God created them as perfect beings, they somehow exercised their freedom poorly and rebelled against God. And that would seem like an irrational thing to do, especially if they were perfect. Like we have this perfect creation. Then these human beings, with their transgression or transgressions, mess it up for all generations to come. Two things occur to me. Number one, it seems weird to talk about all this perfection of humanity in the beginning and then say that we so easily screwed it up. It just... but secondly, we could raise the question, doesn't it seem like that perfection was terribly fragile? Like all it took to just mess everything up was human transgression. And now you get these shock waves extending around the planet and through all of history, and I don't know, maybe going out into the universe as well. I don't know. But you kind of go like, really? And, especially, we'll just add, we won't try to solve this right now, but in the light of evolutionary theory, whatever you might think about it, it at least would raise questions about whether or not we're properly describing creation as perfect in its being created, if perfection excludes sin, death, predation, all of that. But back more to a more traditional consideration, it's precisely, or at least partially, because it seemed like a terribly large result of human sin to have all of this, degradation and violence and failure, that Christian tradition has also often postulated, or we'll say speculated, toward there being some greater spiritual force behind, the human fall. And we generally call that force Satan. Now, I tried to talk about that a little bit in your reading. We can certainly discuss it more in class. But I'm going to end with this. All we've done there is push the problem back one step, because Satan is also created by God, and as are all angels. And angels presumably would have been part of a perfect creation. So now we're asking, well, how is it that these perfect spiritual beings who were actually dwelling, according to tradition, immediately in the presence of the God who is, eternal love, how in the world would these perfect beings have ever rebelled and fallen? Now, what these stories, I'll call them stories for now, do point out is that there is something deeply irrational about rebelling against God, but especially if you set up the what's the word I want here, level so high as to talk about perfection, and then to ask, how did this perfect creation, how could it take such an abysmal fall? So there may be some other way to talk about this, some other way to attack these problems. All right, well, this will be enough for till I see you on Tuesday. You know the assignment.